Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Matt Horn
is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hi,
Matt, it's Dave Chapman, one of the puppeteers for BB-8 from Star Wars. Oh, yes. I was just calling to say you have to go and see The Rise of Skywalker. You may have seen some promotional activity around for this film. It's a Star Wars film. It's the last of the Skywalker saga. Obviously, you'll have an opinion about it. So, yeah, give me a call when you've seen it. Bye.
On the line, we have Dave Chapman talking to us from... Where are you talking to us from, Dave?
I'm talking to you from the south of England on the planet Earth.
I would say what's the weather like, but I kind of already know.
Yeah, England in December. It's not sunny. But hey, that's okay, because there's a Star Wars movie out, you know? So that's a bit of warmth and sunshine in your lives at Christmas time.
You've completely ruined my segue.
How was I to know?
Well, Dave, the reason why I've got you here...
Yes.
I can't even believe I'm saying it, really, is because of the new Star Wars movie, The Rise of Skywalker. It has been released now, but from what I can tell from the reviews, it seems to be a mixed bag.
Interesting. Well, obviously reviews are important because they tell people about things they need to go and see. Equally, there are so many opinions out there, and there are so many different critics and audience members who come from different angles and different age groups and different perspectives. Some people have a great love of the prequels, some people have a great love of the original, some people have a great love of the whole canon, some people love the animations and the TV shows and the comics and extended universe, and everyone has a different place on the Star Wars map, if you like, from an opinion point of view. From my point of view, because obviously I can't really comment for anyone else, The Rise of Skywalker is a JJ movie, so it's brilliantly made, and it speaks to for me, it speaks to people who are right across that spectrum. So I mean, you know, a critic is professionally paid to watch movies and make statements about it, but we've had great reaction to the film from all sorts of people, from little kids who are new to the whole thing and came on board with The Force Awakens, right the way through to old school fans. I went to the premiere the other night with a very good friend of mine who's a massive old Star Wars geek, and he said that really spoke to me. So that really, really spoke to me, and I said that's great because you know, it's important. It's a 9-movie saga. It's been 42 years in the making, and this is the end of that Skywalker story. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Obviously, I'm not going to give any sort of spoilers away, but we know Palpatine's back.
You mean the laugh at the end of the trailer?
Yeah.
I couldn't possibly comment. You have to go see the movie, but you know, there's there's always dark and light in the Star Wars universe. Yeah.
And yeah, basically it's just continuing on the last 2 films.
Everyone's kind of going, so what is the deal with Rey? What's her lineage? What's happening there? Where did she come from? You know, where'd she go? And obviously, because it's the last part of the saga, it's only right that those questions get answered. So that's why it's got a kind of an epic tone to it. Apart from it wrapping up this wonderful 9-film series, it's also got the sort of the mystery that we've had to deal with since The Force Awakens is, who is this girl? You know, why is all this stuff happened to her specifically? We learn a lot more about that, obviously, and of course, you know, Oscar and John, you know, Finn and Poe and stuff. Their stories progress. Everyone's kind of moving through it, and it's classic old romper stomper fun movie. You know, it goes so quickly as well. I have to say, I watched it. It was super speedy and in a good way. You know, just never stops moving. It's brilliant.
Well, I'm going to ask a controversial question now, to do with BB-8 actually.
Oh, okay.
You've done BB-8 for the last 3 films.
Myself, and yeah, there's a team, obviously, but yeah, there's 2 puppeteers and 2 animatronics geniuses / software genius. So yes, there's kind of a team of us, but yeah, I have indeed.
Yeah, and obviously, once the first film was released, they had this merchandise for BB-8. You know, you could get like a little android robot kind of thing that you could sort of, you know, motion control and go around and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's the Sphero, BB-8 Sphero, yeah, indeed, for running around your floor and your carpets, having its little galactic adventures in front of the fireplace.
And you must have been thinking, fantastic, all the kids' presents for Christmas.
What do you mean? I thought that for the people in my life, or do you meant for the world?
Well, both, basically.
We do have one. They're great. And yeah, that Christmas was kind of crazy because it was one of those sort of Buzz Lightyear / Cabbage Patch Doll toy moments where basically anybody under the age of 10 who'd seen that, and over the age of 10 who'd seen that movie, was like, that is my Christmas present. I want one of those. It's a lot easier to control than the real thing. Yeah, you do see that stuff everywhere you go. So you get to an airport and you see BB-8 everywhere. At that time, Force Awakens, it was one of those characters that just hit the ground running, and everyone, no pun intended, people really got it. And it was kind of, he's very old-fashioned Star Wars design. He's a lovely thing to look at, and he's a fun character, and it just went crazy. There was cookie jars and rucksacks and training shoes and t-shirts, and it was nuts. This secret is a secret we kept. So the concept of BB-8 and the design of BB-8 was kept a secret for so long, and then the guys in the movie got to see it. So Daisy and John and Oscar and everyone got to know BB-8, and we're still keeping it a secret. No one's seen him. And then when we're shooting Force Awakens, there was drones and cameras and people trying to get on top of us when we were on location. And every time they came over, we covered him. Well, we covered lots of things, but one of the things we covered was covering him with a big cover-up kind of cloth thing, like a rain jacket thing. It's not a rain jacket. It's made of that sort of fabric. So they never got a shot. It was brilliant because we kept this secret a secret. And this is the new Star Wars. It's the droid, and he's a rolling robot, with a sort of weird floating head that no one can figure out. So yes, you keep that secret for 2.5 years, and then suddenly it is everywhere. It's quite strange for the human condition to know that this is a very small kept secret, and then suddenly, wow, not my family know this. The entire world knows what this character is now. It's a weird thing, but we've done it quite a lot because there's quite a few secrets in the movies as we go, through these films, and you do keep. I mean, Harrison, I don't want to be a spoiler for Force Awakens, but what happens to Harrison in The Force Awakens was also, a huge secret. And you live with it for so long, and then you speak to people who've seen the movie and you go, oh my God, I can't believe that happened.
Well, as I said, obviously, you've got all this merchandise, that's out on the shelves, and you're going to laugh at this. Now that Baby Yoda has come out, aren't you feeling a bit, oh no,
No, not at all, no. There's a good twofold answer to this. One is that, we had a great run at it, and BB-8 will be there forever in the way that some of those other Star Wars characters will be there forever. And Yoda's a character very close to my heart because I got to assist Frank Oz. I joined a very select team of people who are part of the Yoda family across the years on The Last Jedi. So anything that Yoda does is all good by me. He's another classic character, be he baby version Yoda or old man Yoda. He's just an absolute, iconic, I'm sure you'll agree, an iconic character. So wherever he goes, whatever he does, I'm like, yeah, that's all good.
Obviously, when you see it in the film, he's rolling about on the floor and knocking into things and whatnot.
Yeah.
How hard is it to control BB-8?
Well, it's easy to control him, so he never gets out of control. It does anything where you're like, whoa, what's he doing? It's just about the precision of where he's looking and what his thoughts are and how clean that can be. It is very precise, and he is doing things that, you can tell an actor to walk to a mark and hit a mark on the floor so they're in the right focus line for the camera. You can tell an actor to intuitively look at the person next to them. Now, obviously, what happens when I'm and Brian and Matt and Josh are working with BB-8, we have to sort of figure out, he runs into the room, he stops there, and then he looks here, and then he looks over there, and he does this. And so, because I'm running the head at that moment, I'm working on a remote control transmitter, and it's kind of 1 millimeter on my transmitter represents 2 inches in the real world. I'm mixing up the measurements there, but if I move my transmitter 1 millimeter, that'll give me 2 inches left or right, or on the real thing. So it's very, very specific and very kind of pinch up accurate, and we have to quickly look at things and figure things out before we shoot and make sure that he's good to go. And he doesn't ever get out of control or anything. It's just that it is about precision. If he's not looking down the lens, if he needs to look down the lens, or if he's not looking at John, or if he's not looking at Daisy, or if he's not looking at R2, it looks really weird. And I joked with JJ on the first movie that I wanted to get a t-shirt printed that said 359 degrees of wrong. Because we just do it every day. We all do it intuitively. We look at different things. If you look past something, or if you look around something, so you're not quite looking at it, it's the strangest thing to look at on film. The actors are always very careful about their eye lines, and so are droids. He's
a beloved character now, and obviously you've got R2-D2 and C-3PO who are classic.
Yeah, big time.
When you sort of got that job, were you thinking, oh God, how on earth am I going to do this on par with those two?
100%, and that's another thing that people underestimate as well, in a nice way, is that the jeopardy of the situation, stepping into what is essentially a job I've always wanted to do. Like, this is the most exciting thing that happened. It was extremely exciting. But then there's another layer, and the other layer is, if you're going to come along and play with these guys, be good. don't be rubbish. And so there's a thing of, you step up to the plate every day of a 120-day shoot or whatever, and everything matters. Normally everything matters anyway, because you're working on a project and you're hired to do a job and do it well. Star Wars, there's a whole new layer. Everything you do, you question and go, are the fans going to think that's cool? Are the fans going to think that's naff? Or is that okay? You know, are people going to think we're trying to be funny? You know, like, it's all this time. And because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, it's a high jeopardy and it's a high responsibility. So yeah, absolutely, 100%. There was a real sense of, we have to get this right. We cannot get this wrong. And it can't be in any way... you know, we don't want to be that thing in the reviews. So it's like, oh, and the new robot's a bit rubbish, or, you know, the film's okay, but what J.J. Abrams was thinking with that rolling robot, I'll never know. You know, we knew that J.J. was onto something. He drew it on a post-it note. It's his concept. And then it was punched up by Christian Holtzman and Jake Neal Davis. And, you know, it's a beautiful design. And so we looked at the design on paper. Then you got to make it real, and you got to put it in the scene. And, you know, you do have a real sense of jeopardy. Be good, you know, be as good as you can be, because this is important. This is Star Wars, for goodness sake.
He does make noise.
He does.
Yeah. Is that you guys, or is it somebody else?
On the finished product, it is not us guys, and it's not me. It is on set, Brian Herring. He performs the Rod version of the character, so he's essentially standing behind the character and he gets it raised in post-production. He does little guide noises for the actors so that they, you know, sort of time the scene out correctly. Because, you know, for the droid to be silent would be weird. So he makes little BB-8 noises. On the first movie, he kind of invented the BB-8 language. And then when the movie came out, he sort of copied that for the version that Ben Burtt and the sound team put onto the movie. So, yeah, he stands there and does little BB-8 noises.
Well, I mean, it is a language in itself, isn't it? I mean, obviously, C-3PO, R2-D2 had the same sort of communication language. One of the questions that does come up repeatedly is, how on earth does anyone understand what they're actually saying?
They just know, because it's Star Wars. They know droid languages. I mean, Daisy, Rey's been scavenging. She's been living amongst the droids, so she's probably got it boxed off. But yeah, I know what you mean. There's a lot of robot language in the movie. And it's worth saying, actually, Bill Hader, who's the American actor and improviser, he did a bunch of stuff with JJ to sort of decide on where BB-8's voice sat. And then they used, I think they used a Moog keyboard and various other things, quite old school kit to make that sound, which almost sounds like a 1977 Star Wars original sound effect, because it's so kind of squawky and clunky and nice old fashioned kind of noises.
So obviously, Force Awakens, I think that's read.
Mm-hmm.
That it's obviously the first instance that BB-8 was in.
Yep.
Then obviously we've got The Last Jedi, which. Yeah, it seemed to divide the fans in some ways, which, I mean, I liked it. I did actually enjoy it, but obviously there are people out there who didn't. And then obviously you've now got the rise of Skywalker. What's the sort of the arc in this one for BB-8?
Oh, I don't know if I could tell you that. He is... God, what would be his arc? To answer that generically is tricky. I guess BB-8, he's still... You know, he's Rey's best friend in his eyes. He has an affiliation to Oscar because obviously he is, in Oscar's, Oscar's, he's like his co-pilot in many cases. But in this movie, he's just taking care of his friends, I guess. I don't want to give too much away. He's just hanging out with Rey and making sure that everything goes well. He's got some tricks up his sleeve. He's always got tricks up his sleeve.
Are there any sort of funny anecdotes you can share about the production of the film?
This one, or do you mean generally?
You can do both, actually, on that.
Wow. Funny anecdotes from Rise of Skywalker. I suppose from Rise of Skywalker, myself and Brian, who one of the other Puppeteers, he and I are in the battle scene in the movie, but we're in a wide shot, so you can't really see us. So that's a little bit of comedy inside trivia there. We're playing soldiers, and in the Battle of Crate and The Last Jedi, myself, Brian, and Matt, and Josh, and Gary Barlow, and various other people are all the soldiers in the trenches. The trench that you see in the Battle of Crate is mainly people that are connected to the movie. I'm trying to think who else is in the trench. The Sharpie, who's one of the assistant directors, he's in there. He's the one who says it's salt when they find out the planet's made of salt. Next to him is Gareth Edwards, who directed Rogue One. So that trench is quite worth looking at.
Obviously, we need to mention the other thing about Daniel Craig being a Stormtrooper.
Oh, yeah, what a cool guy. He always wanted to be a Stormtrooper when he was a kid. So that's the, hey, he was prepping for the Bond movie after Skyfall. I can't remember which one it was, but he was on the lot because obviously, James Bond has a very, very long-standing connection with Pinewood. So Daniel Craig was around, and obviously he knew Star Wars was on the lot as well. And then, I think he spoke to he spoke to JJ, and they fixed it up, and he's funny. So he's got a funny little Stormtrooper beat. For anyone who's listening who doesn't know, Daniel Craig plays the Stormtrooper who goes in to see Rey when she's in the torture chamber, and he goes in and she does the old Jedi mind trick on him, as Alec Guinness does in episode 4. He's brilliant. He's funny as well. That's the thing. He brings real flair to being a Stormtrooper.
So, any other stories? Come on.
Other stories from the making of the film. Yeah. Goodness gracious! Wow. I mean, there's so many things when you make a Star Wars film that are challenging and complex, and I suppose the desert is the thing that sticks out in most of our minds as the thing that makes life. It's tricky to shoot in a desert, and goodness knows how they did it in Lawrence of Arabia before there were mobile phones and walkie-talkies and stuff. I mean, it's this sort of you go into the middle of nowhere and hope that everything goes well, and you have support teams and you have pit crews and stuff, but stuff like sand. I mean, for example, droids don't like sand, and BB-8 definitely doesn't like sand. How in the old days a video camera doesn't like sand, or a modern smartphone doesn't like sand, and it's everywhere, and it's on the wind. So there's lots of kind of sort of weird things that happen to you because of the fact that you're in the middle of nowhere. You have water crew that keep you hydrated all day. On the first movie, it was about 50 in the shade. It was crazy hot, and you just sort of hope that everything goes well. But I suppose it's this strange thing of you rock up in the middle of nowhere, and suddenly, because the locations team have been there before you, everything is set. So you drive for miles and miles and miles, desert, nothing, and then suddenly, blam, there's catering for 600 people, and there's workshops that we all move into, and there is bathrooms and all the camera support gear, all the vehicles you need, and buggies, and there's roads put into the desert that are temporary roads that then get removed, and then the desert gets put back to exactly as it was before you arrived, because most of the places we shoot are World Heritage sites, that places of interesting beauty. So there's something, I mean, it's not particularly funny, but it's the weirdest thing in the world when, again, you realize the scale of what you need to do to get the shots that are as exciting and as engaging as the stuff that is in the desert footage of these movies. And equally, we go to other places. We went to Iceland for Rogue One, and we went to Ireland. Luke Skywalker, was living on Achtu, which is, the Isle of Skellig in Ireland, which I understand now is heavily visited. Well, not the island actually, but the neighbourhood is heavily visited by people on the old Skywalker search. But you can't get to the island unless you take a boat and you have permissions. It's an ancient site where monks lived hundreds of years ago. So, they pick these extraordinary places. Along the ride, we get to see all that stuff. So it's wonderful.
I've got to go on a bit of a downer now, slightly. Obviously, you guys are a family. The passing of Carrie Fisher obviously has had this huge effect on production, and obviously on you guys as cast and crew. How do you make a film still work with the absence of one critical character?
The answer is most definitely in the movie. I'm sure you're aware that the stuff that Carrie had shot for previous movies, and not for any other reason than, whenever you make a film, lots of stuff ends up on the cutting room floor, not because of its quality, but because of time. So you can't include everything you want because, films get very, very long. So it's not stuff like, oh, that's off the cutting room floor. It's just scenes that they didn't use in the end. And, it's an incredible feat of smoke and mirrors by Roger Guy and his team, the ILM guys, who have not used any digitally generated Carrie. Everything, you see is a real Carrie. And so that's another step, because I think other people have done digitally generated versions of actors who have passed away and that sort of thing. There's a digital Carrie in Rogue One, because at the end of Rogue One, she's 1977 Carrie. But this movie utilizes footage of Carrie. It's really, really beautifully done, really clever. I mean, it's beautifully done from the guys who made it happen physically, and also from JJ and Chris Terrier's point of view, the scripts. It's done so tidily and so neatly and so respectfully. I think she'd think it was a hoot as well. I think she'd think it was such fun that, her character got to sign off, even though she wasn't, present for the movie.
Okay, you're going to have to tell me, which of the original cast have you met?
From 1977. What do you mean, the big hitters like Harrison and Ford and Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, and those guys. I've met lots of them actually for a kind of number of weird reasons. So I'd already met Kenny Baker, Peter Mayhew, and Anthony Daniels. So I'd met R2, 3PO, and Chewie in my previous work before I joined the Star Wars family, and then of course I re-met them all. But yes, then we met Harrison Ford, obviously, and Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill on the Force Awakens, and they're all as much fun, and they were all as charming as you'd expect. It's always that thing of don't meet your heroes, and I mean genuinely, I have two massive cultural reference points in my life. One is the Muppets, and one is Star Wars. And I was a huge fan of Harrison. I got him to sign my Raiders of the Lost Ark poster because it's the one that was on my bedroom wall when I was a kid. I took it in and said, hey. It was amazing because they're all so charming. They've been friends all over the years as well, so they're pretty close because they were friends when they were very young, and they've gone through the industry and they've kind of met on various Star Wars things over the years, and they've been associated with each other a long time, so they're very, very close. It's cool because you go, wow, they actually are friends. They are nice and they are friends and they're cool. And then Mark he's like me. Mark Hamill as everyone knows, is a huge, great comic book geek and a great fan of silent comedy and old movies and stuff. He's brilliant. So there's so much fun to be had with all of them. And as you know, Carrie was incredibly erudite, funny, great writer and great raconteur. And Harrison is Harrison. He just sits out there in legendary Harrison world. He's everything you want him to be and more. He's so specifically him, and it's wonderful. It was just great. A great honor to work alongside those guys because they're just legends. I was 5 in 1977. They were my guys,
Bit of a personal one here, right?
Yes. Do I have to answer, or can I go? No, I don't want to answer.
Yes, you can, but you won't want to.
Okay.
Did you fangirl out?
Did I fangirl out? That is a good question, and I have been asked it a few times. Walking up the ramp to the Millennium Falcon is a weird thing to go through. So that is something which everyone went, yeah, when I walked up there, it suddenly hit me. Because it's a real environment, so it's not got a wall missing, it's not got a fourth wall missing like in most movie sets. It is a real environment, so when you go up the ramp, you're on the Falcon. And that hit quite a lot of people. Kevin Smith burst into tears. Some of the guys came up from the original movie, Norman Reynolds and Robert Watts, Gary Kurtz, producer and production designers and stuff, they all got very tearful. It's a weird thing. I suppose it'd be like boxers like running up the steps that Sylvester Stallone runs up during the Rocky montage. It's just that thing of you just go, right, we're definitely in Star Wars now. Funny enough, when we made the movie, we were so worried about the nerves surrounding this massive project. We pretended, myself and Brian pretended we were not doing Star Wars. And The Force Awakens was chronologically shot. So where it starts in the desert, that's where we started. So it's fine. So in the desert, we were like, oh, it's not Star Wars. Oh, that girl looks like kind of Star Wars-y, but it's not Star Wars. It's just another movie job. It'll be fine. And then, because it's chronological, Daisy and John steal the Falcon, and then we're back in London, and we're on the Falcon. And then Harrison and Chewie walk through the door. Sorry, Han and Chewie walk through the door, and you just go, there's no fooling ourselves anymore. We're in the Millennium Falcon. There's Han Solo and Chewie. We're in a Star Wars movie. We couldn't play that game with our minds anymore. But, yeah. There's a bit of that. There's definitely a bit of stuff where you pinch yourself and say, "Wow, this is incredible." And there's a lot of visitors to the set, by the way. There's a lot of people, a lot of celebrities calling up saying, "Hey, I'm a massive Star Wars fan. Can I come have a look around?"
The other question is, and obviously you're contractually obliged and you can't answer it, so that's a given. What's the future for BB-8?
I don't know. I mean, he's in Star Wars family now, and he's very popular, and everyone likes him, which is good. I'm not sure because obviously he sits in the world of Rey, and so therefore, he's done for the moment. And maybe there'll be other BB units, and there'll be other BB-8s in different stories in the Star Wars, the Star Wars world if they go back to do other things. I'm not sure, but one thing's for certain: the BB droid as a thing exists. I did BB-9E for Lost Jedi, which was the kind of bad BB-8 who was spying on the other BB-8, which was great fun. So they're in the Star Wars world now, so I reckon we will see BB units. Whether or not we'll see BB-8 again, I don't know, but I'm sure he won't disappear for long.
I've also got to mention the other thing as well, because obviously around about the time that Force Awakens was coming out, they did the Family Guy Star Wars-esque episodes. What were your thoughts? I mean, it's not just Family Guy. I mean, I think Robot Chicken did the prequels, didn't they?
Yes, yeah. Everyone loves that stuff. It just feeds so much creativity and so much fun. But yeah, I love their stuff. Seth Green came and had a look round The Force Awakens, actually, and we were joking with him, and he was pointing at stuff, and he said, this is the stuff that I'm going to have to be thinking about in a year's time. So he's looking at the creatures. He's not seeing the movie. He's just looking at the creatures going, wow, what am I going to do with that guy? You know, so it is funny, and everyone loves it. No one's sort of snobby about it. Everyone loves a good Star Wars rip like that. It's good fun.
Well, let's talk a bit about you, Dave, you yourself.
Okay.
What made you want to get into puppeteering in the first place?
Well, very straightforward. It connects directly to our previous questions. I saw Star Wars in 1977, and I saw The Muppet Show in 1977, and I was 5 years old. And from that point on, if anyone ever asked me what I wanted to do for a job, I said I want to work for the Muppets, and I want to do monsters. And I wanted, at the time, special effects. I was quite interested in building models and blowing things up, so I quite like the idea of special effects at that time. So it's like special effects in Star Wars or Muppets, please. And that's what I thought from that point on. And I was telling somebody this the other day, and they were finding it difficult to believe. And I've never had that reaction to that statement before. They were like, "What? Are you sure? At 5, you actually knew?" I was saying, "Yeah. I mean, just ask my mum. You know, I did know, and I wanted to do that, and I just had to figure out how to do it." So weirdly, the catalyst for my entire career was Star Wars and the Muppet Show.
And you worked in Jim Henson, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. I worked at Jim Henson Company. I never met Jim Henson, unfortunately. He passed away about 3 years before I was there. But I did work at Jim Henson Company. That was my break, really. And I started off at the Muppet Workshop, trained to be a Muppet performer, because they were about to do Muppet Treasure Island. So they needed some background performers and stuff. So that's where I got my start. And again, that was another amazing thing from my point of view. If you told 11-year-old Dave that he'd be doing that, then his mind would have exploded. And then same a few years later, if you said to 11-year-old Dave, you'll be working on Star Wars, that also would have exploded in my mind. But it was something I always wanted to do. So, you know, I think it sounds terribly cheesy, but if you want to do something, and if it's definitely something you believe you can do, then, you know, go and find it, sniff it out, call people, email people, you know, discuss, you know, learn, read, absorb, keep moving forward, because so many people give up on that stuff, and you know, if you really want it, you can do whatever you like.
Now, I'm going to share something with you, Dave.
Yes.
I had my head buried under my legs last night.
Why?
A bit like BB-8, actually, in some respects. Because, obviously, I know you do Star Wars, which is fine.
Yes.
You've done Jim Henson.
Yes.
Now, I'm 31.
Right generation for a small live television-based Aardvark character.
Yes. Now, obviously, I looked through your IMDb, and I literally, as soon as I saw it, I went, no, he can't be. Surely, there's no way on earth that this man, Dave Chapman, is Otis the Aardvark.
Yes. It's crazy. I was 21 when I started, so I was very young when I started doing Otis, and I think everyone assumes, even when I was doing Otis, I'd turn up at a TV show and they'd go, "Oh, we thought you'd be like an older guy with long hair or a beard or something." But yeah, I was 21, so I was very young when I did Otis, and he was just great fun. There's nothing like live TV for, you know, flexing your improvisational muscles and having fun and being reactive and doing goofy stuff you really can't do in a tape studio, because, you know, it's just a different discipline being on live. You have a specific amount of minutage that you need to fill, and you need to make it engaging and funny. And back in the day when we did it, we had editors and we had producers, but they were very, very freeing and kind and helpful, and they let us do more or less what we wanted to do and just kept us on the editorial remit. But essentially, we just mucked about. We had a great time. It was a crazy job to do when you're that age as well, because I made friends that I still have now, and we all still stay in touch and stuff. But there's just something very, very fun and immediate about live television. So you were watching, like, don't tell me what age you were, because it made me feel old, but you were watching as like a teenager or a 10-year-old or something?
Yeah, I was literally 10 when this was going on.
And did you think Otis was funny?
I was talking to someone the other day about the 90s, and we were talking about all the things we remember from the 90s. So you were talking sort of CBBC, which is where Otis was predominantly.
Yeah.
Live and Kicking.
Live and Kicking was on, yeah, absolutely. Saturday morning, Zoe and Jamie.
Dick and Dom, which obviously...
Yeah, well, yeah, I ended up in that as well. That's another 3 years of my life.
Yeah.
Doing their lovely next-door neighbour's cat, who was a very miserable cat, and went around the country going to sort of British seaside towns and giving them sort of travelogue reviews. That was great fun as well, another crazy job. But yeah, Saturday morning, I've done a lot of Saturday mornings, weirdly.
I've got to ask the question, Dave.
Yes.
Are you the voice?
Yeah, I am, yeah. Does that freak you out?
It is, if you do it now.
Yeah, okay, I will. it's difficult to jump into all these years on, but he's kind of like this. oh, Mr. Horn. Oh, it's very nice to meet you. Here we are on the internet radio. No, what are we? I don't even know. Are we being streamed? Ooh, do not stream me. There you go. That's how Otis talks.
You remember how you said you walked onto the Millennium Falcon, you fangirled out?
That's because I said your name in Otis's voice all these years later. Now you're a grown-up. Yeah, he was great fun.
I've heard rumours about this, and I'm not quite sure. But it's worth asking, Dave, do you still have the puppet? Because I don't think you do.
I have sort of large parts of the last Otis I had. I've got the majority of it. I use one a year. It sounds crazy, but they get tired out. I use them every single day except Sundays for 5 years. So every year you get a new one built. Great fan fact. You're going to like this. No one knows this in the whole wide world because I've never done an interview where people know the stuff you know married up with the stuff to do with the Star Wars thing. There's a character in Star Wars called Nine Num, who is a co-pilot to Lando in Return of the Jedi, and he also turns up in the movies we've been doing recently. And his performer, Mike Quinn, built Otis the Aardvark for me. Go figure. There's a little Star Wars stitch back right there.
Well, I'm looking on Wikipedia and I can't trust it, okay?
Right.
Okay.
What's it saying?
It says, in a 2009 interview, BBC presenter Kirsten O'Brien revealed that she has the Otis the Aardvark puppet and once used it unsuccessfully to impress a date.
That's correct. That's absolutely true. So she has one. So she has like number 4. I had number 5. Number 3 was in exhibition work for a while, but it disintegrated because the foam dries out over the years. And we're talking about something that, it's 20 years ago or whatever, longer. So, yeah, that's true. Kirsten has one. Definitely still has one. I've seen her in the last couple of months, and she still has an Otis in her life. But, yeah, there are bits of him around. And it's weird as well, by the way. When you're working, you get runners come up to you and, young producers, like people your age, who go, hi, Dave, somebody told me that, is it true that you were, and then you go, yes, and then they go, did you do the voice? That same question. Did you do the voice? I go, yeah, and they go, how did you, and then you do the voice, and they freak out. And then I have the horrible thing like I did with you, saying, how old were you? And they go, I was 7, I was 8, I was 10. But yeah, it's funny, it stays with you forever, and it's because it predates digital television, and, streamable and all that stuff. When we were kids, there was only 4 channels to watch, right? Unless you were super rich and had Sky. We'd get 6.5 million. I mean, that's the weirdest thing that people always forget, is that you don't get 6.5 million in children's programming anymore because there's so much choice. And you can watch streaming and you can watch a show you recorded last night and you can do whatever you want. Whereas back in the days, it was like, are you a CITV kid or are you a CBBC kid? He was seen by so many people that it stays with you forever because, he had a very wide exposure back in the 90s,
Well, the other thing as well is obviously Otis was used as sort of a segue between shows, wasn't it?
He was in between programs, yeah. So Prez, BBC presentation department that do all the stuff that's not programmed. So all the stuff in between, all the weather and all the links and all the voiceovers and stuff. So we worked for that department, and then within that we just kind of were given nice free rein to do, wacky kids programming of an afternoon from 3 till 5:35 when Neighbours came on, which is another thing as well. A lot of people tuned in for Neighbours, so you got a lot of grannies and grandmas and older people who were watching Neighbours and stuff, who then turned on the TV at 5:30 to get their cup of tea ready to watch their show, and then they were introduced to Otis. So again, huge reach. I used to get letters from pensioners all the time, and there was a lovely lady. She was going on cruises around the world, and she sent Otis a postcard from every country she visited. It's a wonderful time for media right now, but equally back then it was huge reach.
I mean, there's not really anything like it now, is there? Really?
No, there isn't. I don't know if I have colleagues at the BBC who hate me for this, or anywhere else for that matter. It feels like it will just slowly go to bed, because why in the world of streaming programming, you don't need any interstitial links or any intro. You go to your menu, you select your show, and you watch your show. There's a lot of really fun stuff that's come through presentation, and also lots of fantastic talent as well. Loads of people who are currently very, very well known in the industry. I mean, even from CBBC, Zoe Ball, obviously, Radio 1 Breakfast Show host, and Philip Schofield, who's hugely popular with This Morning. Both of them started at CBBC in the broom cupboard, and Holly Willoughby, started at the BBC. It's strange that there's a lovely, solid training you used to get, quite an old-fashioned training that taught you how to work on live television, and to timings and to do all the stuff you have to. There's loads of technical stuff goes on that the audience don't even ever need to know about, and it's a brilliant grounding. And I think lots of really cool people have come up through the ranks doing that job, weirdly. And I just obviously wasn't going to end up in Vision. I was going to always be weird characters. So that's served me very well.
I mean, obviously, as a child, you sort of are mesmerised by this Aardvark that's on the screen talking to you. But then, obviously, you grow up and you realise it's actually someone with their hand stuck up it, really, basically.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. It's true. But then again, I suppose it's like the sooty thing, because if you think about my mum's generation, I guess, the sooty and sweeps thing was great. And when I was a little kid, I used to think they were fantastic. And I still think they're great. When you look at it under the microscope, it's just a guy waving a foamy thing around. You could say that about anything, really. And, like Muppets and all that sort of stuff. Really, what it boils down to is a very lovely foam and fabric character that's being animated by hopefully somebody with an engaging mind and a funny character voice and, some ideas behind it. And that's when it really cooks, is when it's got rich character. So, like, Fozzie's a failed comedian and, Kermit's desperately trying to keep the show in gear, and Piggy is this crazy, egomaniacal pig who wears designer clothes. It's just so much fun there, and it's all what you just described. These guys and girls with their hands up things in the air, but it works, and it's funny, and it's unique. There's lots of things you can do with puppets you can't do with humans. We just did the Dark Crystal for Netflix like last year, and that has no human beings in it, just like the original Dark Crystal. And it plays, it's just under 10 hours, and you can watch it. You never go, I just want to see a human. You go, okay, I'm in this world of Thra, and this is how it exists, and this is how it rolls. But essentially, it comes back to the same thing of it's just people moving things about in a clever way.
I mean, with the kind of new avant-garde kind of ways of doing puppeteering, do you ever sort of go back to that emotion as a kid when you look at it and you think, how on earth are they doing that?
Oh, that's interesting. So you mean, like, is there ever a moment when my brain is confused as to how something's being done?
Yeah.
It's really rare, but it does happen. It sounds really, I'm so clever that it's rare. I'm not so clever. It's just that obviously because of what I do, I know all the fixes and various ways and means around achieving shots which are tricky to do with something that's essentially not real. So I do know how all those tricks are done. I occasionally get fooled. I can't think of the last time I got fooled. But you know what I do? I phone someone as soon as I get out of the cinema and go, hey, have you seen the thing with the thing? How do they do that? What's going on? So you find out immediately how some trick has been achieved. There's one that I didn't know for years, so I was waiting to find out a particular shot in Little Shop of Horrors. Do you know the Little Shop of Horrors, the movie? With Rick Moranis and Ellen Greene? There was a shot in that movie that I spent, 35 years waiting for the answer, and I asked the director straight out, how did you do that shot? Because it's always confused the hell out of me. I cannot work it out, and nobody knows. And he told me, and it blew my mind.
The other thing as well, I mean, because I find this interesting, is the fact that obviously when you were in the Jim Henson Company, you were doing puppets that were sort of animals or, creatures, that kind of thing. And now, obviously, you're in Star Wars, you're doing mechanical...
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, BB-8 is one part of my job detail, I have to say. There's a load of other characters in the movies that are me and Brian and Damien and Colin and the puppeteering team on the movie. So, I have my hand in a lot of those characters that you see. I think we've all got about 35 each. So, like, Porgs are myself and Brian, who do BB-8, and Colin and Damien, who are two other puppeteers who are wonderful, do lots of stuff on the movies. So I still do soft and fluffy because there are cute characters in the Star Wars universe as well as droids, and there are monsters and creatures, and they all need the help of somebody like me, I guess.
How hard is it to go from like doing the creatures to then doing mechanical robots?
I think it's easy in the sense that you have to learn each bit of kit, but if you take that bit of learning out of the equation, it's the same vocabulary. So I've likened it in the past to when a dog sees something curious, it'll tilt its head to the left because it can't figure it out. A human being very often will tilt their head to the left when they can't figure something out. A Muppet puppet will tilt his head to the left when he can't work something out, and BB-8 tilts his head to the left when he can't work something out. So it's the same vocabulary, just being translated into different things. I'm not saying that that's an exclusive way to express confusion in a puppet character or a human being, but lots of the disciplines and the movement vocabulary you would use for two friendly, fuzzy puppet characters are the same movement vocabulary you use for two evil robots. it's like human nature stuff, and it's like animal stuff. So we watch a lot of animals. When you do movies that have stuff that are animal-like or animal-esque, you'll look at the animal that you feel is closest to them on Earth and study how that animal moves, and replicate that in the movement of the character. Again, this is sort of stuff that I don't know if it's interesting or boring, because there's so much goes into each little thing that you do, and I think people underestimate again how many man hours and girl hours there are. There's so much to do before you shoot. So before we would shoot a new character, there's new characters in Rise of Skywalker, there's new characters in the other movies we've done. Before they go to the set, we've already camera tested them robustly. We know who they are, what they're doing, how they operate, how to get all those beats out of them. So when the director says, hey, can I run over there and do that? You go, yeah, of course. You can't be wasting shoot time by going, oh, we'll just figure that out. By the time you've got to the stage, you know everything you can do with that character. BB-8 is a good example. Myself and Brian spent 12 days on a soundstage on our own before we did the movie. And those 12 days were, okay, this is the piece of kit, make it engaging, see what you can get out of it, and that's where we learned those beats. And then that was kind of it. We've learned a few new things along the way, but we did pretty much all our learning with him before we shot the movie.
Well, the other thing as well is obviously there are characters which, I mean, Elmo's a great example of this, I think, whereby they'll have the Elmo puppet on them, but then they're speaking to Elmo, and Elmo's speaking back to them, even though it is them doing it. So what were you going to ask about that? Because that's a very interesting world when the character is stood next to the puppeteer. Well, the question is how on earth do you sort of get into that mindset that you're having a conversation with yourself, essentially?
Yeah. It's very rare that I do it, funnily enough. When kids come in and meet the puppet character, very often, if you're doing puppet shows, this is aside from Star Wars, when you're doing some soft, fluffy puppet stuff, and like I was doing Otis, lots of people would say, oh, the kids are going to come in. Do you want us to cover you with a black sheet? And you go, why? Or do you want to hide behind the table? And the point is what adults have forgotten is the kids don't care. So kids do not care about the man who appears to be somehow making this thing work, because the man is not interesting. It's just a man. Whereas the talking aardvark or the funny monster or the giant hamster or whatever you're doing is so much more interesting. So they don't care. They do acknowledge you. Like, kids always glance at you and go, okay, that guy's doing it. But then they won't freak out. They never ever question it. So yeah, if you talk to yourself as a joke along the way, then it's easy. I think it's easy. It's just like second nature, because you just immerse yourself in the character for that time. I mean, ventriloquists are the ones you really want to ask that question to, because they're amazing, because they're presenting two very distinctly different characters right there in front of you, and you can't see their lips move. That's insane for me. That's like puppet madness, but it's very clever.
Well, I mean, the other question I did have, which is a bit controversial, I suppose, if you're a puppeteer, is obviously nowadays they do have the option of doing everything in mocap.
Yeah.
So they can change people's faces, and Avatar's a great example of this. It's not puppets, it's mocap and digital and CGI. When you look at stuff like that, the first question is do you ever feel that they've sort of overdone it in terms of the CGI when they could have used the puppeteer to do it? And secondly, do you sort of get a bit scared when you see all these new films coming out with proper CGI and proper mocap technology being used, and you're thinking, oh, in like 20, 30 years, this might be a bit of a niche thing, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, the first point, whatever effect you have to achieve as a filmmaker, whatever way you have, whatever ways you have open to you and whichever methodology you choose, that's all good, and everyone's getting great results. There's so much great stuff out there based on the fact that technology has advanced so much that you can achieve so many things. But I don't get scared about, sort of us being gazumped or usurped or overtaken by those guys. I was 20 years ago when digital stuff was really advancing very, very quickly, and I thought, well, why would they ever need us? But we work hand in hand very closely with all those guys now. So there's a brilliant thing goes on with digital augmentation. So we will, from the very outset, from storyboard time, be saying, right, can you guys take over there and just do that connective? And they'll say, yeah, as long as you give us a thing of the close-up of the thing with the thing that you say you can do live. And there's an interchange that goes on. So again, it's very smoke and mirrorsy. I mean, BB-8 is an example. Brian's there a lot behind the character. There's lots of different versions of BB-8. One of them is the rod puppet with Brian stood right behind it, and he is removed digitally. So we wouldn't have been able to do that in the old days. You'd have to have thought of another way around it. So it is hand in hand. there'll be puppet stuff where there's a character, and in the cut they might look like they're not looking as sad as they could because perhaps that day something didn't work on their eyebrows or their eyes weren't wrinkling or whatever. And with the digital guys, they can go in and fix that and help us out. And so, everything has digital avatars, so everything we do is scanned. So there's always the option for them to place the character in a shot that you didn't shoot. But it very rarely happens, I have to say, because directors like to see it on the day in the world being real. And again, audience members, you can tell. You cannot fool an audience as far as, is this thing really there? Oh, she just touched it. It must be. There was an interesting thing. Brian banged into some crates on The Force Awakens, and at the end of that take, he said to JJ, "I'm sorry, I banged into the crates," and it all wobbled. And JJ said, "No, when we do it next time, bang into the crates." And Brian was like, "Why?" He said, "Because it proves you're there, and it proves we didn't put you in afterwards, and it looks real and earthy." Genuinely, it's not kind of like a feel-good answer, it's a genuine answer. We all work together, and people like the digital artists at ILM are stunning, and the guys who head all that stuff up are the top of the game. So I'm happy to see it all out there, really, and a mix of everything is cool, because then we all get to stay working and creating these insane illusions.
Well, I was going to go on about the Black Hole, which I think is one of my favourite Disney movies, actually.
Oh, I love the Black Hole. You mean the original Black? Yes, it was 1980, or was it 1981? I mean, I don't know whether I'm speaking out of turn, but certainly many of my colleagues are also big fans of the Black Hole. So it doesn't have a kind of a kitsch or naff value. We like it for what it is, for real. It's great. And before they remade Tron, everyone loved Tron as well. And, we still love Tron, but it's just that we were like, well, what if they're ever going to make that again? Again, that's what we were all raised on as well. So all those reference points. I just saw a 4K restoration of Gremlins the other night. The Joe Dante Gremlins that Steven Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy produced. And it's brilliant, and you sort of go, we were so lucky in the 80s that every month or two an amazing film came out, and it was just a weird boom time, and the huge influences on what we all do, and all the guys at Star Wars, the concept artists, Ivan and Martin and Louis and oh god, I've got to get all the names, James and Luke, they design all this stuff, and they are also the same sort of generation. They were raised on all that wonderful 80s movie and cartoon stuff, and there's so much stuff out there. There's a wealth of cool stuff. I can't remember where I started now. I've gone off on one. It was just about the 80s and good movies. Why are we talking about that?
Well, I mean, obviously I need to mention this. I wasn't horrified when I heard it, but I still have to mention it because now that you've said that you're a fan of Black Hole, I kind of have to do it. Disney are thinking of remaking it.
I thought I'd heard something about that. Yes, and what are you going to say?
My question is obviously because there were two robots in the Black Hole. You know where I'm going with this, don't you?
Yeah, goodness, yeah, I'd be there definitely. I have a feeling that, it depends what they make it. But yeah, always up for that. Yeah, goodness gracious.
Yeah.
But anything to do with all that stuff, I'm a huge fan of it.
Well, I'm going to give you a 1 minute plug, Dave.
You mean to plug my personal garbage? I don't have any personal garbage, but that'd be quite funny in itself.
I'm going to give you a 1 minute plug to plug, obviously, The Rise of Skywalker and anything you've got coming up. However,
yes,
there is a little bit of a thing for it. You've got to do it in the voice of Otis the Aardvark.
I can, but equally, what about, can I do somebody else as well?
Yes, you can.
Oh, God, Otis is such a stretch, man. It's such a stretch. Vocally, it's such a leap. Okay, so I'm literally talking about Rise of Skywalker. Do you know what I'm worried about? I'm worried about promoting Rise of Skywalker in the voice of a character that doesn't belong to Disney canon. That is my fear that I'm going through right now. I could do it in the voice of Alec Guinness if you want.
Yeah, do it in the voice of Alec Guinness.
You must go and see The Rise of Skywalker at the cinema this Christmas. I guarantee you would be very, very engaged by it. Wonderful story. It started with George Lucas in the 1970s and still as popular today as it was then. And of course, the wonderful thing about The Rise of Skywalker is you get to see the end of the Skywalker saga, for which I was, of course, present at the very beginning. But you can see how the story ends, and that's a very lovely and charming thing to do with your Christmas. May the Force be with you.
That was Alec Guinness, literally promoting The Rise of Skywalker in my front room. Down the line to you, unbelievably, Matt Horn. I can't believe he walked in here and did that, and now he's disappeared like the Jedi Knight that he is.
In the first film, in The Force Awakens, they got Alec Guinness's voice.
Yes. Yeah, he says, Ray. Yeah, it's great. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And that's from a word he's saying, and I don't know which word it is, because I dug down into this because I'm a Star Wars geek. I asked the sound guys, what was going on with that, and they said it's taken from a word off the original audio recording, either rushes or off the movie itself, which has got the sound ray in the middle of it, like the word grave has the word ray in the middle of it. So, yeah, they just snipped that out. Fitted perfectly. Did you notice it when you saw the movie?
I think everyone noticed it.
Well, no, I had some friends who didn't. I was like, what do you mean you didn't know? That was amazing. Because it's an audio cue. They were like, oh, really? Oh, that's what it was, you know. I think they didn't think it was Alec Guinness as well. They were like, oh, did they get somebody to do an impression? Like, oh, no, that would be bad. I've just done an impression of Alec Guinness and said that would be bad. But you know what I mean. You need the real voice for that. And
have you got anything else coming up, Dave?
I mean, I do have stuff coming up. I've got stuff I can't talk about, which is really useful for the non-visual format. I don't have Twitter and I don't have Instagram because I'm just running around like an idiot and I never get a chance to. But no, I do have stuff coming up next year, probably television, and what else do I have coming up that I was going to tell you about? I've just forgotten. Oh, I did a crazy French movie called Mandibles, which is out next year, and it's in French. So if you're a French speaker who likes to go to the cinema, then go and see Mandibles. It's a great fun film about two guys who find a housefly the size of a baby in the back of their car. That's page 1.
Well, Dave, it's been an honour. It's been a pleasure.
It's very nice of you to say so. I don't feel terribly exciting. You know, I'm not John Boyega, but it's great when people like you who like our stuff go, wow, that's cool.
Well, thanks very much for your time, Dave.
No worries, Matt.
Obviously, we'll have to get you back now.
The telly thing is actually a kids' telly thing. But, yeah, Mandibles is crazy. That French movie is brilliant and completely off its head. Do you remember Flat Eric when you were a kid, the little yellow Muppet character? He basically advertised Levi jeans.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Well, I do Flat Eric for Quentin Dupieux, who is the French creator of Flat Eric, and he's also a film director. So he did this movie, which we did in France this year, and because I was doing Flat for him, he said, "Oh, I've got this movie that's got a puppet housefly in it, like a giant housefly. It's like real. Would you be interested?" I was like, "Oh yes, that sounds like great fun." So that is bonkers.
Well, thanks very much for your time, Dave.
No worries, Matt. Thanks, man. Good talking to you. Very easy to talk to, and thanks for asking all the good questions.
Thanks very much for your time.
All right, cool. Cheers, Matt. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.